You got everything you need? Oh, we need to go backwards.
Good morning, and welcome to the UU Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. We're so delighted that you could join us for this service today. Our mission at Sunnyhill is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Krista Stanley, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you're a newcomer or a visitor to our congregation, please go to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says New to Sunnyhill to receive more information about our congregation and to receive our weekly email newsletter. If you're joining us online today, please say hello or good morning in the comments on Facebook or YouTube. We'd like to hear from you and extend a warm welcome to you as well. Today's service is titled Beyond Self-Reliance. This sermon examines the tension between self-reliance as famously espoused by Ralph Waldo Emerson and the attributes needed to achieve the goal of the beloved community. Today's speaker is Reverend John Balance. John has been a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the North Hills in Franklin Park since 1982. He has a BS and an MS degrees in metallurgical engineering from North Carolina State University. He has been a research metallurgist in the steel industry and a copper alloys producer. He served as editor of a technical journal and then as executive director of a professional society for 25 years before retiring in 2008. He attended Meadville Lombard Theological School, receiving a Master of Divinity degree in 2016. He was ordained by his congregation in 2018. His ministry, both while in seminary and since, has been as a volunteer chaplain in Allegheny County Jail. So welcome to John, and we all thank him for joining us today. Our opening words were written by Andrew Pakula. We arrive together here, travelers on life's journey, seekers of meaning, of love, of healing, of justice, of truth. The journey is long, and joy and woe accompany us at every step. None is born that does not die. None feels pleasure that does not feel pain. The tear has not yet dried on the cheek, but the lips curve sweetly in a smile. Numerous are our origins, our paths, and our destinations, and yet, happily, our ways have joined together here today. Spirit of life, source of love, may our joining be a blessing. May it bring comfort to those who are in pain. May it bring hope to those who despair. May it bring peace to those who tremble and fear. May it bring wisdom and guidance for our journeys. And though this joining may be for just a moment in time, the moment is all we can ever be certain of. May we embrace this and every instant in our lives. Please join me in saying the words for lighting our chalice. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, and celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning. I'm Paul Lawson. I'm substituting today for our music director, Mary Pratt, who is having a well-deserved vacation with her family. And I would like to say, before we start our first number, and Judy comes to join me, that I am very happy that this is the particular Sunday that I get to pinch hit, because I've known Reverend Balance for 21 years over a number of different situations, and he's just an awesome guy. So we're going to go sing From Your Receive. We're going to sing it through twice together. Then I'm going to evenly split us in half. So we'll sing twice together. Then Judy will sing, lead you the right half. Your left half. And sing through 4 times. And we're number 2. We're almost as good as number 1. And you'll follow me and we'll sing. So twice together through, then 4 times in a round. Okay? And stand as you're willing or able. No. You are able.
Good morning. Today is June 19th, which means it's Juneteenth here. So I would like to share a story called Juneteenth for Maisie. It's a picture book. The pictures will be on the slides, so there's no reason to come up here because you have a better seat where you are. So today's story is Juneteenth for Maisie, and it's by Floyd Cooper. Maisie wants to play outside, but it's too late. It's getting dark, Maisie. It's time to stay inside. Maisie wants a cookie, but it's time for bed. Not now, little one. It's too close to bedtime. Maisie wants to stay up late, but she is too little. Bedtime is the rule, sweet girl. Why so grumpy, Sugar Bear? Asked Dad. I can't go where I want, have what I want, or do what I want, answers Maisie. Well, tomorrow you can have a celebration, says Dad. What are we celebrating? Asks Maisie. We will celebrate the day that your great-great-great-grandpa Mose crossed into liberty. The day will be celebrated by us and many more families on a day we call Juneteenth. Dad lifts Maisie into his arms. I bet you're tired of hearing no all the time. Well, great-great-great-grandpa Mose heard no even more. Grandpa Mose worked in fields that stretched all the way to sunset. He and the other slaves would be bone tired, but they had to keep going. Their masters wouldn't let them quit, but as they worked, they thought about freedom. And before they finally went to sleep at night, they prayed about freedom and made plans for change and a better future. Some slaves ran north to freedom, following a bright star in the sky. They sweat, they bled, and they cried, till those cries were quieted by a single proclamation from a brave president. Grandpa Mose heard the proclamation read from the balcony of the hotel on that warm June day in Galveston, Texas. Grandpa Mose heard nothing but cheers, saw nothing but happiness, and felt nothing but pride shared by all those around him. The cheers became dancing. The dancing became celebrating. It went on into the night. Grandpa Mose and the others had found freedom. They continued to work, but this time they were paid for their hard work. So they worked, and they saved, and they never forgot the moment they heard, the moment that changed their lives forever. But things weren't perfect. Black people still struggled to stand shoulder to shoulder with white people. They weren't treated as equals. It wasn't easy, but they never gave up. And every year on Juneteenth, they remembered. They marched for jobs. They lobbied for schools and the right to vote. They shouted for opportunity. And every year on Juneteenth, they celebrated and remembered. They learned and they grew. They forgave. They excelled and achieved. They became heroes. Now, sweet Maisie, it's your turn to celebrate, just like great-great-great-grandpa Mose. It's your turn, Maisie, to eat some barbecue and drink some strawberry pop. It's your turn to celebrate and to remember. On June 19, 1865, soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, announcing the end of the Civil War and the end of slavery in the United States. It was more than 2 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. Celebrated every year on June 19th, Juneteenth commemorates the announcement of the abolition of slavery and the emancipation of African American citizens throughout the United States. And with that, it's time for our children to head to their RE class downstairs. But first, we will sing you out to As You Go.
Rejoice
Special music today is a song by my first favorite band, The Police, called Message in a Bottle. I was very happy when Reverend Balance's sermon was on Beyond Self-Reliant. When I was young, I was too self-reliant, and it took me a long time to learn the true value of blessed community. Just a castaway, an island lost at sea, oh. Another lonely day with no one here but me, oh. More loneliness than any man could bear. Rescue me before I fall into despair. I'll send an SOS to the world. I'll send an SOS to the world. I hope that someone gets mine. I hope that someone gets mine. I hope that someone gets my message in a bottle, yeah. Message in a bottle, yeah. A year has passed since I wrote my note. I should have known this right from the start. Only love can, but love can break your heart. I'll send an SOS. I'll send an SOS to the world. I hope that someone gets mine. I hope that someone gets mine. I hope that someone gets my message in a bottle, yeah. Message in a bottle, yeah. Walked out this morning, can't believe what I saw. 100 million bottles washed upon the shore. Seems I'm not alone in being alone. 100 million castaways looking for a home. I'll send an SOS to the world. I'll send an SOS to the world. I hope that someone gets mine. I hope that someone gets mine. I hope that someone gets my message in a bottle, yeah. 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 Sending out an SOS. I'm sending out an SOS. I'm sending out an SOS. I'm sending out an SOS.
Each week at this time in the service, we share joys and sorrows submitted by members of the congregation. We share the things that we are celebrating as well as the things we are mourning, so that they do not need to be held alone. Joys and sorrows may be submitted online from our website. After each joy or sorrow that I read, please respond by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." First, we have a joy from Carla Morado Cumming. My husband and I are celebrating our 9-year anniversary on June 22nd, and the sarcoma walk was a huge success. To Carla and her husband, we hold you in our hearts. This joy comes from Dennis Sweeney. 20,089 is a magic number. It was celebrated last Friday by Martha and me. That's the number of days we have been married. It's 55 human years. We celebrated our steadfast trust, respect, and love. The poet E.E. Cummings says it better than I can. Here, in the deepest secret nobody knows, and this is the secret that's keeping the stars apart. I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart. To Dennis and Martha, we hold you in our hearts. Congratulations to all these lovebirds. And finally, I have a special joy to share with you all this morning. Yesterday, Sunnyhill was honored to take part in the first annual Lebo Pride celebration. It was a day of community, joy, and solidarity against hatred and bigotry. We were asked to share a statement of affirmation on behalf of the local faith communities, which was a request that I personally did not quite understand the full weight of. The experience and education that we received on behalf of the organizers of the event, including the emotional labor that they provided, was a true gift. The final statement that was humbly shared yesterday was the culmination of that process. I appreciate the collaboration from Reverend Laura at St. Paul's Episcopal Church down the street, Reverend Sarah from St. John and Carnegie, Sunnyhill's beloved conversations coach, Reverend Aaron Walter, and my personal friend and colleague from the UU congregation in Worcester, Ohio, Jenny Papp. I appreciate the thoughtful feedback offered by the Lebo Pride team, particularly Asa Kill and Valerie Fleischer. I share this affirmation statement with you this morning in the spirit of humility and to honor the gifts of the LGBTQ community among and beyond this congregation. Sunnyhill Unitarian Universalist Church, St. Paul's Episcopal, Temple Emmanuel, and Sunset Hills Presbyterian join you in celebration and gratitude for all the gifts that the LGBTQIA+ community brings to our world. We stand with you today and affirm the inherent worth and dignity in each and every person and honor the spectrum of gender diversity and sexual orientation beyond the binary reference points. We lament and apologize for the harm that has been done, both historically and in the present, by religious institutions that dishonor the wonder and diversity of all people. This community is still being subjected to conversion therapy, anti-LGBTQ legislation, lawsuits like the one here in Mount Lebanon disguised as parental rights, and more. These are not issues of yesterday. They are very much still present today and right here in Mount Lebanon. We acknowledge that even in our own congregations, where queer and trans folks are cherished members, we still commit microaggressions and cause harm. Our words are not enough to undo the generations of trauma, pain, and suffering. We disavow every effort to erase and violate the dignity and worth of all siblings, and we pledge to fight with you against erasure and shame. We recognize that there is always more to learn, and we're committed to continue that journey in advocacy for inclusion. We are committed to action. Part of that action is saying without equivocation that we support inclusive education in our schools, which celebrates diversity and fosters compassion. We urge you to do the same by writing to the school board and signing petitions that protect these sacred values. We are honored and overjoyed to celebrate Pride here today. We see you, we love you, we stand with you. To the LGBT community and all who have experienced trauma, on behalf of churches, we hold you in our hearts. To the Pride team and all who felt the love and support yesterday at this event, we hold you in our hearts. Thank you.
We take this moment to remember why we are here, to comfort one another, to join our voices in song, to speak truths, even hard truths, to take part in the great dance of life. May we have light to see that which calls to be seen. May we have stillness to hear that which calls to be heard. May we have clarity to know that which calls to be known. We pause now for a moment of shared silence. There is much to sing about, both in praise and in lament. There is much to dance about, whether light of mood or heavy. There is much to share with one another, in plenitude or in scarcity. Let us sing what is in our hearts. Let us dance with the spirit of the holy. Let us share what we have been given in love. Amen.
Our next hymn, is something that we don't normally sing a lot, so that's why I encouraged people, if they had to get their teal hymnals, 1020, Woyaya, and so I find it a little easier to have the tambourine to keep the beat on this one. So let's stand as you are willing and able, and join us in singing Woyaya. You'll notice on the third page there's on the third and fourth pages there's some repeats. So once you flip the page, you get to the bottom of the third page, and you'll see that there's a little repeat on that one time through, and then there repeat when you get to the fourth page. There's a bar that you repeat, and then you repeat the last bar. So like I said, it's a little more helpful to have the book. So. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know with Him, and we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but
Good morning. It's always a pleasure for me to come back to Sunnyhill, and I love what you have done with this beautiful space that you've added. It's just very spiritually inspiring. The 13th century poet and mystic Rumi, a Sufi Muslim, wrote this: "Beyond belief and unbelief, there is a field. I will meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about." Rumi continues, "There is neither Islam nor unbelief nor anywhere in that place." Rumi was alluding to a destination that is not geographical. I choose to interpret his words as describing what we in the last half century call the beloved community. This morning, I want to intertwine three separate threads while asking how views of self-reliance affect those threads and the weaving together of those threads. The first thread is the belief, not stated or even alluded to in our 7 principles, that each of us has a moral obligation to be the best person that we can be. The second thread is the concept of beloved community, the concepts and characteristics of that beloved community, and how we might go about creating that community. And the third thread is the legacy of slavery as a key element of the economic development of the United States. I believe that most Americans have an unformulated, instinctive yearning for beloved community. The concept of beloved community is not new, although the specific terminology is relatively recent. Thomas Paine, in the 18th century, as an ardent revolutionary and advocate for American freedom, independence from Britain, he wrote, "When it shall be said of any country in the world, 'My poor are happy,' neither ignorance nor distress is to be found among them. My jails are empty of prisoners, my streets of beggars. The aged are not in want. When these things can be said, then may that country boast of its constitution and its government." We could readily add a few more categories or criteria to Paine's. When racism was a quaint story you remember your grandfather telling, the well-being of people had more sway in the action of legislators than moneyed interest. When the United States used moral suasion in world leadership and relied less heavily on military force, when police actually did protect and serve and the use of deadly force was a rarity, when every citizen had full access to medical care as a human right and not as rationed by health insurance bureaucrats. I could go on, but I suspect that there would be a high level of commonality among items on the list of things that most Americans would pose as to what a beloved community would look like. But if everything I listed, as well as those by Thomas Paine, were to come to pass, as if by magic, they would still be insufficient to achieve beloved community. In the words of the hymn, "Wo-ya-ya," that we heard this morning, there was a confession that we don't know exactly where it is that we're going. But we do know intuitively, and that is enough. And we're confident that we will somehow get there. It will be hard, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we are determined, and we will get there. But how? The devil's in the details, isn't it? A quote from Theodore Parker, a contemporary of Ralph Waldo Emerson, cites the difficulty of dealing with hefty challenges, but with an inherent sense of optimism. Parker said, "Look at the facts of the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of the right." And by the right, Parker was speaking not of the political right, but right in the sense of justice. Parker continued, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience, but from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice. By the way, Parker was not a starry-eyed idealist. As an ardent abolitionist, he felt it necessary to keep a pistol in the church desk to protect himself. What Parker places starkly before us is the suggestion that it is our moral responsibility to do something that changes the radius of that arc of the moral universe, such that it bends more quickly toward justice. With respect to possible steps individuals might take toward doing that, the first commandment is to do what you can do. The 19th century orator and Unitarian Universalist minister Edward Everett Hale, who, by the way, was the main speaker at Gettysburg, he said what I had intended somewhat more elegantly: I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Thus, the first prerequisite for making meaningful change, the first step toward that hazy, beloved community far in the future, is to decide to take action and not to be dissuaded by not knowing precisely what to do or how to do it. Well, yeah, we know within. Each of us has different passions, different abilities and experiences, different resources, and different constraints. There is no substitute for each of us making our individual decisions about what we can and will do. Individual efforts may be small, but collectively we can, will, and must change the world. Recognizing individual decisions and actions is a key pivotal point that leads me to an issue that I feel the need to address in the negative. And that is self-reliance, in reference to the well-known essay on that topic by the eminent 19th century Unitarian minister, writer, lecturer, and philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson. I find much in Emerson's writing stimulating and rewarding, especially his Divinity School address, his essays on nature, and what he called the Oversoul. But I am not a fan of his essay, Self-Reliance. Although I don't disagree with this concept of depending on one's own thoughts and beliefs, particularly with respect to religious matters, he states his opinions with such draconian force that invites little room for discussion. For example, he states flatly he doesn't care at all what others think. He dismisses consistency out of hand as if there could be no possible merit whatsoever in a style of consistency in anything. He dismisses travel as a fool's paradise on the grounds that whatever shortcomings one may have are with you wherever you go, without conceding any possibility that travel might lead to transformative insights and experiences. I find that sort of absolutism off-putting and not worthy of emulation. I take his sense of self-reliance to be a reach too far for reasonable people to practice, especially those for whom the term beloved community is not only a desirable goal, but in fact an essential one. I'm very much aware that my own thoughts are very much affected by the viewpoints expressed by other people. I'm not a slave to their opinions, but perspectives critically affect the final shapes of my views. My philosophy in this regard is better expressed by Max Ehrmann in the beginning of his poem Desiderata, which was written in the 1920s. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even to the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. If you choose to read Emerson's essay, Self-Reliance, for yourself, which I encourage you to do, You should bear in mind that Emerson's world was very different from ours. At the time he wrote Self-Reliance, the United States was barely 50 years old. There were only 26 states in the Union, and the population was just over 15 million, which is probably about the population of Pennsylvania, compared to about 330 million in the U.S. today. In other words, the U.S. population was then only 5% of what it is today. There were approximately 2.5 million enslaved people. Self-Reliance was published in 1841, 20 years before the Civil War, and the issue of slavery and abolition were major and contentious issues. In the 1830s, there were major financial crises with the collapse or near collapse of many large banks in the northeastern United States. Citizens were living through a time of major financial and civil unrest. How this tense and yeasty environment might have affected Emerson's views on self-reliance is difficult, perhaps impossible, for us to know, but it is hard to imagine that it wouldn't. The lens through which he viewed the world was inherently very different from our own. For good and for ill, our thoughts are influenced mightily by the ethos of the world we are born into and live in. Emerson was an extraordinarily intelligent, thoughtful, perceptive, and knowledgeable man, and if he were writing a treatise on self-reliance today, I believe that he would land in a very different place than he did in 1841. I have no way of assessing what effect, if any, Emerson's self-reliance has had on the emergence of American exceptionalism. I suspect that if he were writing on that exceptionalism today, his critique would be missing the hubris that colors that ethos today. However, I may disagree with Emerson's 1840 view of self-reliance. I cannot escape the power of his broad thinking. And one of his criticisms of the arid intellectualism of some Unitarian ministers who gave short shrift to the importance of the emotions in their sermons, he spoke of corpse-cold Unitarianism, advocating instead that the duty of a minister is to offer his life to the congregation, that is, his life passed through the fire of thought. I want to respond to that charge by sharing with you part of the fire in my belly with respect to the hideous beast of racism and how that informs my personal ministry. I grew up in the rural South in the era of segregation. I saw racism up close in all its ugliness. And my current involvement in the Pittsburgh Interfaith Impact Network, where I am currently the treasurer, I choose to engage in PIN because I see it as the best path that I can follow to counter the evil of racism and the legacy of slavery in America. A few months ago, Paul Lawson of this church and Richard Freeman, president of PIN, started a book study group to read and talk about books examining racism and the Black experience in America. Our first book was Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. We are currently beginning The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee. These two books are the result of extensive research, and they have really shaken me up. I thought I knew about racism in America because of how I grew up, but I now realize just how little I really did know. I won't try to summarize McGee's book for you, only to tell you what a powerful effect it has had on me. I invite you to consider joining the study group, and for that, you can talk to Paul Lawson. I will read you part of a paragraph from near the end of the book in a chapter titled The Solidarity Dividend, where she had just finished citing the real benefits that arise from deliberate attention to diversity. She said, "So it turns out that diversity that is causing an often unconscious racial panic in so many white Americans is actually our biggest strategic asset. The research has borne this out in education, jurisprudence, business, and the economy. Put simply, we need each other. Our differences have the potential to make us stronger, smarter, more creative, and fairer. Once we abandon the false idea of zero-sum competition, the benefits of diversity become evident, from the classroom to the courtroom to the boardroom. McGee's documentation of the false narrative surrounding racism demands a moral response. Much evidence of work that needs to be done is laid out plainly before us. Who is to do the work? If not us, who? If not now, when? One thing is for sure, self-reliance in the 1841 Emersonian mold won't cut it. One of the gentle ironies of my life is that while committed to being intentional about what I do and what I choose not to do, many of the most meaningful things in my life have arisen unexpectedly and as a result of no deliberate intention on my part. The genesis of what I chose to say to you today about focus arose as an accident of my taking a volume of reflections from my bookshelf that I did not recall that I had. It is a slim book called Walking Toward Morning by the Reverend Victoria Safford, minister of the UU Church in suburban Minneapolis. In one of her reflections called Set in Stone, she told of wandering through an old graveyard in New England. One gravestone was of a woman whose name and dates of birth and death had been erased by the weather, and only the epitaph remained. It read, "She attended well and faithfully to a few important things." Reverend Safford relates that she was put off by that sentiment. At first, it seemed to me a little meager, a little stingy on the part of her survivors, but I wrote it down and thought about it since, and now I can't imagine a more proud or satisfying legacy. She attended well and faithfully to a few important things. Safford continues, "Every day I stand in danger of being struck by lightning and having the obituary in the local paper say, for all the world to see, she attended frantically and ineffectually to a great many unimportant, meaningless details. Each of us has the same number of hours in a day, the same number of weeks, days in a week. But those folks who make the greatest difference in this world are those who learn the importance of focus, of determining what they will and will not do. It is not necessarily an easy skill or a habit to learn, but the beloved community will be created by those with focus who are committed and who show up. Whatever actions one might choose to take, I believe that it is essential that we approach those with whom we disagree with compassion, humility, kindness, and love. Certainly, a beloved community cannot exist, cannot even be formed, without fundamentally being committed to these virtues. My definition of love is one that I got from M. Scott Peck's book in his remarkable book, The Road Less Traveled, where he said, "Love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth." I'm going to read that again because it's very easy to miss the power of it. Love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Humility is a critical value in its own right, and compassion and kindness are forms of love. I'm indebted to a friend of mine who is the kindest person I know. When I'm tempted to be dismissive of those with opinions that I think are, at best, ill-informed, he reminds me to exercise the spirit of love from Peck that I just cited, and to consider that by being harsh toward those people that I find vexations, I am not likely to get them to change their minds. The only way that I'm likely to get them to change their minds and behavior is to consider that they have their own thoughts and reasons, and by inquiring without judgment about why they view things as they do, perhaps in a resulting civil discourse, they might change their opinions, or possibly I might learn something and change mine. Certainly, the only way that disparate people will ever be able to create beloved community is through such compassionate, kind, and loving processes, and with humility. Without question in my mind, beloved community will be beyond self-reliance in the form that Emerson described. The desire to work in meaningful ways toward beloved community was challenging enough before, and the coronavirus has shifted the ground beneath our feet. As UUA President Susan Frederick Gray has pointed out in one of her messages, this is no time for a casual faith. Despite the challenges, there is reason for optimism. Congressman John Lewis, a leader in the U.S. Civil Rights Movement, who died almost exactly 2 years ago, wrote in a message to be read at his funeral the following: "Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic processes are key. The vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed. You can lose it. When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide." Can I get an amen from someone? Amen. Thank you. Thank you. My friends, beyond COVID-19, beyond self-reliance, beyond our current civil and political struggles, there is beloved community. Come with me. Let's go there together. And wo-ya-ya.
May I invite you once again to bring out your teal hymnal and turn to, see, I've got my tab in here for When I'm Frightened, which is 1012. And stand as you're willing or able, and let's sing When I'm Frightened.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly
be seated.
It's time for our morning offering. We don't have a designated offering this morning, so our collection will benefit Sunnyhill and will help defray our operating expenses. If you'd like to make a gift via our online giving system, you can do so by going to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says Online Giving, and then follow the instructions. Or you can give by text at 412-324-3130. Just text the amount of your gift and the word pledge if you want to make a payment toward the 2022 Sunnyhill Pledge. Otherwise, text gifts will go toward our general operating fund. You can also mail a check if you prefer, and you can find our mailing address on our website at sunnyhill.org. For those of you who are here with us in person, we'll be passing around our offering baskets in just a moment. Thank you, everyone, for your generosity. Please join me in saying the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. We'll close with these words. That which is worthy of doing, create with your hands. That which is worthy of repeating, speak with a clear voice. That which is worthy of remembering, hold in your hearts. And that which is worthy of living, go and live it now. Go in peace.
I just want people to know that I'm Pat Murray, and I represent this church on the board of PIN. So if you're interested in the book club, which is wonderful, I've participated, please see Paul. But if you're interested in PIN in general, stop by, see me, email me, call me, text me, okay? Please. Thank you. Again, Pat Murray.